we head into the Singapore Grand Prix weekend, big breaking news has come out regarding the case between Noah James and Mason Woods, and that their court case has been set. The hearing for this court case is going to take place after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, for all of you guys that are unaware of this story, I will break it down for you very briefly. Halfway through the last season, season number 7, we officially had news break out that both Noah James and Mason Wood had stolen files within Ford's team factory with regards to their engine. Now, initially there was no real problems with any of this, as it was kept under the books for quite some time. Noah James driving for Ford and Mason Wood driving for Red Bull at the time. Red Bull's BMW power unit was really poor, and one way that Noah James felt that he could go ahead and help Mason Wood in what he called a debt that he owed was to try and take some of the team data and hand it over to Mason Wood so that they can use that as a little bit of a booster game. Eventually though, this was found out via CCTV, and with Ford launching an official investigation after a break-in had happened. Noah James and Mason Wood broke into the Ford team factory after the factory had closed for the day to steal these files. Now, of course, it's a case of, did Noah James blackmail Mason Wood into doing this, or did Mason Wood simply lie to say that there was a blackmail, but turns out that there wasn't, and just went along with the process? No matter what, the court case is here. It's going to be after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and we can finally put an end to this saga, and that is so much good news for Ford's team principal, Ewan Wright. Of course, Ewan Wright, the team principal at Ford, has been heavily involved in this entire saga, and he said that it's really mentally drained him, and he's confirmed that he is going to be at the court giving an official statement, and he finally looks to end the saga once and for all. This has really dragged on for Ewan Wright, but finally, hopefully, it can all go right for him. But let's get into the race news and see how everyone gets on. Taking a look at the race news as we head into this weekend, it was Ferrari, McLaren, and shockingly Renault that were topping the timesheets in practice, with Ferrari topping the timesheets in FP1, McLaren went fastest in FP2, but then Renault and Tom came out of nowhere and topped the session in FP3, and teams are wary of Tom's Singapore pace in his Renault. Now, of course, Tom has had very strong performances at the Singapore Grand Prix in the past, and that seems to be coming into effect here. Tom has stated many times whilst driving for different teams that he's able to use a specific setup which is very unusual, that teams have stated, to really get his car to work. And as even though teams have adapted and found out roughly what type of setup Tom likes to go with from being at different teams that he's been at, they just can't get it to work. And there's also some fine tuning that they can't get right, which Tom can. But this pace is really starting to confuse the other teams. The Renault car is roughly around about half a second a lap slower than the rest of the top 4 teams, being Jaguar, Audi, Ferrari and McLaren. And teams are unsure how Renault are able to find with Tom nearly 0.2 of a second per lap on their rivals. So, is there opportunity for Renault to take advantage of this, or are the other top 4 teams holding back a little bit and waiting to really extract the maximum from their cars? Someone that's unable to extract the maximum from their car is Max Verstappen. He's struggling a lot with setup. He says he just can't find a setup that works. So while Tom is able to find a setup that beautifully works here at Singapore, Verstappen is on the opposite end of things. He can't find one. Now, one man that's looking to get their season on track is Reese. He is hoping to get a good start, to get his season back on track. He's had a tough 2 first races, and he's now looking to really try and put amends to that and get a strong performance in. So let's see if he can do that, or whether his season is still going off course. We will see you guys for the Singapore Grand Prix. Yo, what's going on, guys? It is Foxydude here. Welcome back to a brand new video and another episode of the F1 journey for you guys. Today here on the channel, we are here for round number 3, which is the Singapore Grand Prix. If you guys end up enjoying today's video, drop it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. And let's get this race weekend underway. This is my favourite track to drive on the calendar, and it's one of the top 3 of my personal favourite tracks on the F1 calendar. So hopefully we're in for a good weekend. We look strong, but we need to make sure we maintain that level of performance then. So as we cross the start finish line, our first lap was not too bad. Second lap here, we're going to cross the line now, another 2/10 up, and we stay in P5, but they're just our banker laps, nothing too special about them, and we can move on now as we cross our way through towards the end of the first few corners. But as you can see then into the final part of qualifying, the final 2 minutes here, this is when we really take the sandbags off here. Over a second quicker than our previous best lap. We go through the last 2 corners now. Purple in sector 1. We've got purple in sector 2 here. Can we get pole position for the first time in season number 8? Cross the line? Yes, we can. Here we go then, it is race time here, and the first night race of the season. It is the Singapore Airlines Singapore Grand Prix. This is round number 3 of the F1 Journey season number 8 here at the Marina Bay Street Circuit. And as you can see, current conditions, it is 28 degrees air temperature with a humidity of 82%. There is also a chance of rain that may hit during the Grand Prix. Whether it does is another matter. The 3.146 mile circuit is half custom built and half actual streets, with the pit straight being one of the areas of the circuit that is an actual genuine piece of racetrack and not a part of the street, in case you were unaware. The first time that wet conditions were staged here at Singapore was back in 2017. Could we see that come into play again? There we are on the grid for the first time here, starting from pole position. It was an awesome qualifying session, but let's see how everyone else got on here on the grid then. So let's go through this order. So we start the race from pole position by 0.3 of a second, nearly 0.4. Lewis Hamilton is on the front row. Reese qualified in 3rd place ahead of Charles Leclerc in 4th for Audi. A very familiar 3 drivers there. Carlos Sainz is 5th with Stoffel Van Dorn, an impressive 6th for Red Bull. Nick De Vries qualifies in 7th place with Sam having to settle only for P8. Sergio Perez qualifies in 9th and Daniel Ricciardo in a lonely P10 for McLaren. That's not where you want to be starting. Lando Norris and Max Verstappen line up on row 6, P11 and P12 for them, with Gasly starting in 13th place and George Russell qualifying in 14th. P15 goes to Oscar Piastri with Mick Schumacher lining up alongside of him in 16th on the grid. 17th is Schumacher's teammate Callum Ilott, and it's the first of the Porsche cars, Valtteri Bottas, 2 seconds off the pole time, with Robert Schwartzman in 19th and Hulkenberg last. So here we are here for the start of the Singapore Grand Prix. It's a 2-stop race for us today. Soft, mediums, but here we go then. We are on the grid now. We've got 5 red lights. It's lights out and away we go, and it's a good start from Lewis Hamilton on the front row of the grid. We have to cover him off, but Hamilton gets a better start, gets into turn 1, but he's cut turn 1 through there, and we go through into turn 3 now, and we are still ahead of Lewis Hamilton. It is not Charles Leclerc, the names mod, still not a part of it, so unfortunately everyone's names are still as standard as we go through now the end of turn 4, now onto the back straight here, down Raffles Boulevard we go. We are now pulling a gap over Lewis Hamilton. It looks like Charles Leclerc then is in 3rd place. Looks like the McLaren of Reese is in 4th with Carlos Sainz in P5 now, but we're going to ride on board here for the entirety of this first lap, see how we get on through these complex of corners. And already Lewis Hamilton struggling massively here compared to ourselves here. We're building a gap now. I wonder if that bit of contact that we made with Lewis Hamilton has cost him some front wing performance. Potentially he might even have some damage from this, but as we go through now through the Anderson Bridge here, I think it is, and now down through the hairpin onto the back straight, you can see Leclerc is all over the back of Lewis Hamilton here. So I think Hamilton has definitely taken some form of damage here. We've got a yellow flag though in the background there, so somebody's had a problem throughout all of that. In the meantime, we're going to continue on our way now. So let's go through towards the end of the final sector here now, dropping the car down to 2nd, flicking it into 3rd and 4th. Of course, don't take my references for gears when you're doing this, when you're doing racing in real life. My cars are about 8 to 10 seconds faster per lap than IRL F1 cars, so yeah, don't do what I do. But as you can see, Lewis Hamilton really struggling now in the final sector. Expect him to come into the pits on the end of the first lap. That was a horrible last corner from me. We crossed the start-finish line though. Hamilton did pit at the end of the first lap, so contact was made between myself and Lewis Hamilton. You can see now it is Charles Leclerc in 2nd place. Let's have a look at the start though and see what happened here. So as the 5 lights go out, it was a much better getaway from Hamilton. We got way too much wheel spin off the line there, and as we go in towards turn 1, this wasn't a really good angle to showcase it. Hamilton cuts the corner and we then make our way through and up into the lead of the race. But let's see how the rest of the drivers veered out. We'll see in just a moment here, and this is us then going into turn 4. So on board with Lewis Hamilton here. This actually looks quite naughty from me because we move over very quickly there, as you see, making contact with Hamilton, and that contact damaged Lewis Hamilton's front wing. It's not visible on the screen, but obviously there is actual damage there, so visual damage, sorry. you can't see the visual damage. Now, this is on board with Leclerc, and this shows it a little bit better. So as we get the 5 lights, you can see here, we actually tried to cover Lewis Hamilton just a second right now, but the back end actually steps out, because by the time I moved over to cover off Lewis Hamilton, I was still struggling with wheel spin there, so I actually lost the rear end whilst trying to move over and cover Lewis Hamilton. It was quite a rash move, you could say, on my behalf, but unfortunately for Lewis Hamilton, it was such a small touch there. But I'm really surprised that that's damaged Hamilton's front wing, but he's had to stop, and that's him further down the order. Lap 4 of this Grand Prix though, Stoffel Vandoorne running in a very healthy P4 at the moment, but Carlos Sainz, the sole remaining Ferrari in the points at the moment, goes around the outside of Vandoorne, making a beautiful overtake, but Vandoorne holds the position though, around the outside now as he goes through in towards the middle sector here. Vandoorne holding position quite nicely. Now Sainz will try and make this move stick around the outside, gets a better run as they go towards the old Singapore sling. Vandoorne though using probably a little bit of energy here as they're going towards the Singapore sling. Sainz holds it around the outside. Vandoorne though is still trying to keep it in there. Now as they go towards the bridge section here, Stoffel Vandoorne has kept the place. Brilliant move there from Vandoorne. Fabulous defensive driving, and that's him still in front now. Sainz on the next lap here is going to go for it again. Now onto the back straight here with the DRS open. Sainz now pressurizing Stoffel Vandoorne. Ferrari's got much better straight line speed advantage than the Red Bull car that Stoffel Vandoorne is driving. Let's see if he can try and make it count though as he goes into the hairpin now. They're going to go for it. It's exactly the same as they did on the previous lap now. So let's see if anything becomes a little bit different on this lap. Looks like Sainz is just a little bit further behind here than Stoffel Vandoorne, but now Sainz once again into the Singapore sling, goes around the outside, takes a little less curb. Contact made there between the two drivers. Now in towards the bridge, and again Vandoorne holds position. He stays in front of Carlos Sainz. Beautiful defensive driving from him. But onto lap 6 of the Grand Prix, our race is going very nicely. We're not being pressured, nor is Leclerc really closing the gap. We're actually holding the gap between myself and Charles Leclerc, which is crucial as I nearly go into the wall then on our entry into the pit lane. There is Charles Leclerc. He is coming into the pits as well, but we're currently boxing now for a brand new set of medium compound tyres in this race. But unfortunately, we're going to get held in the pits here because of Charles Leclerc, which is annoying. So Leclerc is actually going to net gain on us from that pit stop because he managed to get a little bit of an advantage by basically holding me up in the pit lane there. So I thought I would have had the gap to not have that affect us, but unfortunately it has. But we're still back out into the lead, net race lead, should I say, of this race. And we're on a fresh set of mediums. We need one more stop now in this Grand Prix. Lap 7 of the Grand Prix, we're currently in 12th place. Obviously a lot of drivers still yet to stop. So as soon as we find out who has pitted, we can work from there. To lap 8 of the Grand Prix now, we're back up into 6th place after some drivers have stopped. There's a couple of drivers still left to stop here as we close up on one of the Porsche cars here, who is on the soft compound tyres, going long then on their soft tyres. This looks like Nico Hulkenberg that we're attacking now. We get a fabulous run through the hairpin. Now with the DRS open, we can blast past Nico on the straight here, and then braking heavily now round the outside of Hulkenberg. Fresh tyres versus his worn soft tyres. It was an easy move for us. Now we've got the two Aston Martins and one of the Ford cars to get past here. Onto lap 8 now to start lap 9 of the Grand Prix. We're now catching up to that first Aston Martin car. I think this is Oscar Piastri, but I could be wrong. I'm not quite sure what the order is between Schwartzman and Piastri. We'll find out in just a moment's time now as we go through into turn 1 here. Now through, it's Robert Schwartzman that we are catching here. We get a fabulous run through turns 1, 2 and 3. Get the exit now versus Robert, and as you can see, heading onto the straight here, just behind him into the DRS zone, outbrake him into turn 4, and we get the DRS for all that as well. A little bit of happy pleasure there. Next up for us, it's going to be Oscar Piastri, who should not be that long to take. But we're already up into P3. What surprised me is that there were a lot of drivers that aren't doing the one stop. The one stop around Singapore is such an overpowered strategy here, as we see now Charles Leclerc. This is lap 11, by the way. I forgot to show the HUD of it being on lap 11. We are on lap 11 when that overtake was made. I think, or it might have actually been lap 10. No, it was lap 10, never mind. So it's still the same lap here. Now we've caught up to the back of Oscar Piastri, and we're going to try and make this move here down the inside. He actually tries to fight this one off slightly, but we do make the move stick there. A little bit of wide there through that exit of Raffles Boulevard, but we set a purple first sector, and that's good for us. Lap 10, Lewis Hamilton, who's obviously not stopped. He pitted on the end of the first lap onto a set of the medium compound tyres. Reese now on a fresh set of mediums, goes around the outside into Raffles on Lewis Hamilton, and then he has to use the inside line for the next corner to make the move stick then. But Reese, fresh tyres for Lewis Hamilton versus Lewis Hamilton, and it is a job done overtake for him. He can press onwards now. Lap 11 of the Grand Prix. Let's go have a look and see how the other drivers are getting along. Sergio Perez we're on board with now in the Mercedes versus his teammate Nick De Vries. Now an inter-team battle going on here. De Vries goes around the outside of Raffles Boulevard here. Perez tries to hold him off. Perez on the soft compound tyres. If he's not stopped yet and he's gone 11 laps on a set of soft tyres, fair play to you, because that's a long way to go on those softs. The soft's really not a good tyre compound to be on, but Nick De Vries absolutely mugs off Sergio Perez. Then Ricciardo is caught in the back of that, and that's not going to help him out. This is Reese now, who's caught up to the two Aston Martin cars, so he's starting off with Robert Schwartzman to try and overtake, and down the inside he goes into turn 1. Lovely overtake there for him, no problems whatsoever. Leclerc now on lap 12 here is overtaking Oscar Piastri. That was me then in the foreground, just passing through. So Leclerc at the moment is currently being our biggest challenger in this race. Of course, we've got a comfortable gap to him, but he is the main man. There is our car just flicked through the next corner then. Leclerc is the one we need to watch out for because he's going to cause us some problems. Onto lap 12 of the Grand Prix now, starting lap 13 here. Van Dorn is trying to go after Lewis Hamilton. Sainz also trying to get involved in this now. This is going to cost the Ferraris a lot of time here. Hamilton now tries to fend off against Van Dorn into turn 3 now. Stoffel has the inside line. Lewis has got the outside line, but Van Dorn has got fresher medium compound tyres than Hamilton. Hamilton's going to try and hold this one off. Got better straight line speed. Van Dorn though outbreaks him, goes around the outside. Lovely move there from Stoffel Van Dorn, but unfortunately for him, he's not got DRS now on this straight. This is going to cost him here. Now Sainz fancies a run at this. They're 3 wide now. Hamilton switches to the inside line. I thought he was on the outside. He's moved over and switched it to the inside line, but crucially you can see here, Hamilton is really struggling. Look at the amount of cars that are behind him. We've got Ricciardo trying to pass. I think that's De Vries in the background. Sainz goes down the inside. Hamilton's trying to go through now in towards turn 1. Let's see if Van Dorn and Sainz can settle their scraps now through towards the exit of turn 3 here. Looks like Sainz is just ahead of Van Dorn, but Stoffel really holding on in there for all of his life now for this attack here as the DRS opens for Stoffel, opens for Sainz, but crucially it is okay for Sainz as Ricciardo is going to go 3 wide here with one of the Aston Martins, that's not Aston Martins, one of the Jaguars, my apologies. It's Lando Norris then who's passed his Nick De Vries in the Mercedes. Sainz now trying to go for an attack here, lap 14. This is really kicking off between them, and a lovely overtake there from Sainz as he passes his teammate Hamilton. He's actually compromised him though, because now all of a sudden Ricciardo and Van Dorn are going to go for it into turn 1. This is going to get really close and tight between the lot of them, but Van Dorn gets through, Ricciardo gets through, Hamilton drops 2 more places, and he really needs to make a pit stop now in this Grand Prix because he is struggling for tyre performance. He has been on those tyres since lap 1, has Lewis Hamilton, so they are much older, and now all of a sudden he finds himself under pressure from Norris, who tries to go down the inside. He can't go down the inside into the Raffles Boulevard, but it actually turns into the inside line for the second phase of it, so he's going to go to the inside for the kink. He ignores that, and he is through. He now makes up a position. Hamilton, though, once again, has now got Nick De Vries on the back of him. He's also got Gasly, our teammate, trying to attack him. They're going to go 3 wide into turn 1. How many times have I had to say 3 wide into turn 1? Although in the last race in Japan, my favourite line was once again. I do apologise. I realised that I said that a hell of a lot of times, but it is what it is. But for Nick De Vries, he passes Lewis Hamilton. For our teammate Gasly, he's about to get passed by George Russell in the second Audi car, which is not what we want. But as you can see, Hamilton's got DRS here on De Vries, but now all of a sudden Gasly is trying to stay in front of George Russell, and then he's got Max Verstappen in the background there on the hard compound tyres, trying to get involved in this scrap. Verstappen, I think, if I'm correct, was the only Jaguar car that was on the medium tyres from the start of the race, meaning he would have potentially been in contention to fight us at the end when I had to make a second stop. But for Verstappen, this is really costing him in his race. For Gasly, though, that's also costing his race, but crucially, he gets in front of George Russell, who makes a mistake into the Singapore sling. But for Russell now, he's going to go for some revenge here. Verstappen now tries to go for it on Russell. Russell trying to go for it on Gasly. Round the outside into turn 1 for George Russell. Not quite on that occasion. Gasly fending off down the inside now. Russell tries to hold it around the outside here. Verstappen did try and get involved to try and go down the inside into turn 1. That was blocked off though, but Russell then tries it once again now down in towards turn 4. Now Raffles Boulevard here. Russell tucks himself back into the slipstream of Gasly. Inside line for the Kinky, and at the outside line for Raffles, and it looks like he's got that job done. Verstappen now fancies it as well, but I think Gasly is just about going to hold it off. He does, but Gasly now looks like he's the one struggling here. Verstappen catching him all the way here as we now have a look here at the tyre stage. As you can see, the rain now is starting to fall here at Singapore. It was scheduled to rain at some point in this race, and now it is starting to fall. Track conditions getting worse as we get later on into this race now, and this is going to be massive for the Grand Prix, and we really need to concentrate now. And here you can see lap 20 of the Grand Prix. That rain has got so much worse now. 1.9 seconds off in the first sector alone on this lap here. So now, as you can see, we get the call to box for a set of the intermediate tyres. We get very wide then, nearly hitting the wall there as the track conditions have massively deteriorated. Now we need to be cautious here and just get this car into the pits and get a fresh set of intermediate tyres on. We've got no pressure from behind from Leclerc. We've been managing the gap beautifully. Now let's get onto the intermediate tyres, and as you can see, we box now for those. You can see Leclerc is also coming in. We might just get held here by Charles Leclerc as we come into the pits. We'll have to wait and see what he can do here. But now as we come into the pits now for our intermediate tyres, will we get held by Leclerc in the pits? Not on this occasion. So we stay out ahead to a 3-second stop. It's a little bit slow, but that's absolutely fine. We're not too concerned about a 3-second pit stop. At the moment, we have the most important thing on this in this race, and that's track position. So if Leclerc ends up catching me or whatever, we've got the track position and we can start to defend from that, and that's the most important thing that we can focus on right now. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're doing. As we come out of the pits now, we are absolutely fine. Reese there, as you can see, is also exiting the pits. He's currently in 3rd place. Speaking of McLarens, e.g. what Reese is in, this is Daniel Ricciardo now, trying to make an attack here on Sainz now. Tries to go down the inside into the kink. It doesn't work through there, but now down towards Raffles Boulevard. Ricciardo down the inside, Sainz on the outside. Ricciardo says, thank you very much. You'll have that position. That's a lovely overtake from Daniel Ricciardo. I think that was Reese there actually going through the other exit of the corner. So fair play to him, but unfortunately, it's going to be bad news for McLaren, because as we go through here now, you're going to see in just a second, lap 25 of the Grand Prix, the man in P3, the defending champion, Reese, is out of the Singapore Grand Prix. It's an engine failure for McLaren. It's a disaster for him. He's not had a good start to the season, and his season gets even worse. But for us though, our season is getting even better, because we got a brilliant race in China. I think it was P7 or P6. In the Japanese Grand Prix, we somehow managed to fluke our way to a 2nd place, but here in Singapore, my favourite circuit on F1, is absolute beauty for us. We dominate here this race weekend. Leclerc has closed the gap. I'm not bothered by that though, because as we go around the final corner here, for the last time, it is the win for the first time in Season 8. It's the Singapore Grand Prix, and it honestly never looked in doubt. We dominated the Singapore Grand Prix, and I am absolutely delighted. And as you can see, we managed to win the Singapore Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc finished in 2nd place for Audi. Full credit to Charles Leclerc. He battered the competition here today. Myself and Leclerc were in a completely different league. Reese was catching Leclerc in the intermediate phase, but unfortunately for Reese, the engine failure cost him. So really, it was myself, Leclerc and Reese that were just leaps and bounds clear of everybody else. Daniel Ricciardo manages to salvage a podium nonetheless though for McLaren, with Carlos Sainz finishing in P4 for the Ferrari. Nick De Vries gets Mercedes' best result of the season. It's a fabulous drive from De Vries in P5 after his brilliant attacks, especially on his teammate Sergio Perez. Gasly finishes in P6 for us, for Renault. Another great performance from him. Stoffel Van Dorn gets 7th for Red Bull. Lando Norris finishes in 8th, with George Russell finishing in P9. And then Mick Schumacher once again getting points for Ford with P10. It wasn't actually any of us in the top 10 that got the fastest lap. It was actually Sam that got the fastest lap for Red Bull. I think his strategy went a little bit haywire thanks to the weather, but he set a 1:32.3, giving him that fastest lap bonus point, although because he's not in the top 10, he does not get the bonus point for it. He just takes it away from what was originally me. So that's a little bit frustrating. Speaking of the other half of the table, here they are then. So Bottas finishes in 11th for Porsche. That's a shame for Bottas. Very close to getting a top 10 finish. Max Verstappen outside of the points for Jaguar. Bad race for him, with Oscar Piastri finishing in 13th place for Aston Martin. And then we have got Sergio Perez in P14 for Mercedes, with Callum Ilott in P15, and then Sam finishing in 16th. It's Nico Hulkenberg in 17th place. Lewis Hamilton with just an awful Singapore Grand Prix weekend in 18th place. Robert Schwartzman finishes in 19th. Don't worry, I just realised right now Schwartzman is not driving for Red Bull. He is driving for Aston Martin. It's an editorial mistake, but it is what it is. And then Reese is in P20. He didn't even finish the race, obviously, thanks to his retirement. Now, looking at the Drivers' Championship now after that race. We are now top of the Drivers' Championship after 3 races. I honestly did not think I'd be saying that with the performance that this Renault is providing. However, we've had fluky races. Of course, China, it was quite clear, you could see it, we were heavily outmatched. And that was fine. Japan, we were heavily outmatched again, but we managed to nail a safety car strategy. And here in Singapore was a one-off, because Singapore is normally quite good for the player anyway versus the AIs. But, you know, I love this track. I just gel with it. I always do well here. So these first 3 races have really flattered us. We need to wait a little bit longer till we see the other teams really spark. Charles Leclerc, second in the championship, just 4 points behind on 45 points. Lewis Hamilton is on 37 points. He remains 12 points behind in the championship. Lando Norris is 4th for Jaguar with 29 points to his name. Gasly is 5th with 28 points. Max Verstappen is on 27 points for the second Jaguar car. Then it's Reese for McLaren with 18 points in the first 3 races. That's a really poor return. And Daniel Ricciardo is 17 points in the first 3 races. Of course, Ricciardo has had a podium as well. I think Reese has actually had a podium himself, so that's a really poor start to the season for McLaren. Carlos Sainz is 9th in the championship with 13 points. Stoffel Van Dorn is 10th with 10 points actually. Next event is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Now looking at the Constructors' Championship, it is ourselves, Renault, top of the Constructors' Championship. Real surprise this one, 77 points to our names, with Jaguar only on 56 points now, 21 points behind in the championship. But it's quite clear that Jaguar, Ferrari, Audi and McLaren have all got faster cars than us. We're just taking advantage. Not only myself, but Gasly has been putting in some epic races, especially like in the Chinese Grand Prix round 1. He got 2nd there. So, you know, we've had a podium in every single race with me and Gasly combined. So we're just working really, really well. And it's helping. Ferrari are on 50 points, just 6 points behind Jaguar, with Audi on 47 points. They're just 9 points behind Jaguar, with McLaren then lounging down on 35 points, 5th in the championship so far. Red Bull are on 18 points. Ford have 11 points. Mercedes also have 11 points thanks to a great drive from Nick de Vries, but Mercedes really struggling this season. And then it is Aston Martin and Porsche that are yet to score. But that is the Singapore Grand Prix run and done. Let's go to the post-race notebook, see how the teams and drivers felt after the Singapore Grand Prix. Taking a look at the post-race notebook then, and it was Tom that stunned the field with a dominant win at the Singapore Grand Prix in a Renault car that, quite frankly, is probably the 5th fastest car on the grid. But all the teams were wary of Tom's performances at Singapore, and he put that to rest, nailing the setup, nailing the race, and perfecting a beautiful drive. Charles Leclerc finished close behind in P2, also putting in an outstanding drive, with Daniel Ricciardo claiming P3 for the McLaren. All the talk from the post-race notebook comes from the start of the race between Tom and Lewis Hamilton. At the start of the race, Tom managed to get away off the line slightly worse than Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton actually had the jump on Tom from the start, but as Tom moved over to try and cover off Lewis Hamilton, there was a slight snap from the rear end on Tom's side. This meant that as he then tried to defend by moving over, Lewis Hamilton received damage on his front wing from Tom's inevitable move over, and both sides are trying to back their own stories. Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari are absolutely furious with what Tom did, stating that his move was erratic, dangerous, and race-ending for Lewis Hamilton, as it was impossible for him to recover. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forecourt, Tom stated that yes, at the end of the day, he had a snap of oversteer, and there was no denying that. However, he stated that Lewis Hamilton could have done more to avoid collision, as he repeatedly stated that Lewis Hamilton didn't move at all when Tom was trying to defend. He believed that as he had that snap of oversteer, Lewis Hamilton could have done more in terms of his own reactions to avoid that, and he would have been ahead into turn 1, giving him the race advantage. But that is it. They are two sides of the story, but it has come out as Tom victorious and Lewis Hamilton left with no points. But that is it for round number 3 at the Singapore Grand Prix. We will see you guys next time for round number 4, which is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But for now, guys, I'm out. Take care all. Peace.